So, what if the rules for the most powerful office in Ghana were just completely rewritten? Well, that's exactly what's on the table right now. A high-level committee has put together this really bold blueprint to overhaul the entire presidency. And today, we're going to walk through exactly what that could mean for the country's future.
In this quote right here, this is the big idea driving everything we're about to talk about. The goal isn't just to have a democracy that's really good at holding elections. It's about building one that actively, builds a better country. It's this major shift from just being electoral to becoming developmental, a promise of real, actual progress for every citizen. And look, we're not just talking about a few small tweaks here and there. The committee's report lays out a plan to basically rebuild the presidency from the ground up, from the moment someone even thinks about running, to how they govern, and all the way to how they leave office. So that's the real question, isn't it? The one we're going to dig into. To answer it, we're going to follow the proposed journey of a president, step by step, through all of these massive reforms. So where does that journey begin? Well, it starts with the rules for getting on the ballot in the first place. All right, so let's start at the very beginning. This first set of proposals tackles the absolute foundation of who can even run for president and how long they can serve. And honestly, the numbers involved might surprise you. The first huge proposal? Lowering the minimum age for a presidential candidate down to 30. That is a full decade younger than the current requirement. It's a really significant shift, and it could potentially open the door to a whole new generation of leadership. And the second key number you need to know is 5. The committee is proposing to extend the presidential term from 4 years to 5. The thinking here is pretty simple. Give a new administration a little more breathing room to actually implement its long-term vision before all the pressure of the next election cycle kicks in. So let's put all that together. The minimum age would drop from 40 down to 30, while the term of office gets longer from 4 to 5 years. Now, the 2-term limit, that stays in place, but this change creates the possibility of a 10-year presidency, one that could potentially start a full decade earlier than is possible right now. The election calendar itself is also up for a major reform. By moving elections to the first week of November, the transition period for a new government basically doubles from 1 month to 2. This gives everyone more time for a really smooth handover of power. And it also introduces some pretty strict deadlines, just 14 days to challenge the results, and then a final Supreme Court decision within 30 days. Okay, so once a president is actually in office, how would their power and their team be structured? This is where the proposals start to get even more radical, and they really aim to reshape the entire machinery of government. Now, this next proposal is a really big one, and it's all about creating a much stricter separation of powers. It would completely ban the appointment of sitting members of parliament as ministers. And to make sure there are no loopholes, an MP who resigns would be blocked from getting a ministerial job for the rest of that parliamentary term. This would fundamentally change how cabinets are formed in Ghana. These reforms also take a hard look at the size of government. The proposal sets a hard cap. The total number of ministers, and that includes deputies, cannot be more than 3 times the number of cabinet ministers. And since the cabinet is capped at 19, this means an absolute maximum of 57 ministers in total. Any appointment beyond that would need special approval from Parliament. Here's a proposal that's aimed squarely at equality before the law. The committee recommends amending the Constitution to make sure the president's salary, their allowances, and their benefits are all subject to tax, just like every other citizen. Plain and simple, no more exemptions. Now, this is a really crucial check on presidential power. The report suggests sorting all public appointments into 4 different categories. You can kind of think of it as a spectrum. On one end, you have executive appointments, like ministers, where the president has full control. But on the other end, for roles that need to be totally independent of politics, the president's power to choose is severely limited by these new rules. And this right here is where that new appointment system really gets its teeth. See, right now, if a body like the Judicial Council advises the president on who to appoint as a judge, the president can just ignore that advice. This proposal would change that completely. Advice would become legally binding. That means the president's role would shift from choosing a candidate to simply appointing the one who has already been selected by the independent body. So beyond appointments, the report introduces some brand new guardrails to check presidential power on a day-to-day basis. And it also lays out new plans for keeping the government stable during a crisis. Let's take a vote of censure against a minister, for example. As it stands, the president has the option to keep that minister in office. This proposal removes that choice entirely. If Parliament censures a minister, the president shall revoke their appointment. It's such a subtle change in wording from may to shall, but it has a massive impact on accountability. And here we go again. This is another proposal that would directly overturn a Supreme Court ruling. The court currently says a president is technically unable to perform their duties just by being out of the country, which can trigger a transfer of power. This new rule would make it clear that simply traveling abroad is not enough to consider a president incapable of governing. And what happens in a real crisis, where both the president and vice president are out of the picture? The line of succession would change dramatically. Instead of power going to the Speaker of Parliament, who is an official from a totally different branch of government, the cabinet would elect one of its own members to act as a caretaker president. This is all designed to keep the executive branch running smoothly and ensure the continuity of government.
All right, so the journey is finally coming to an end. The report lays out new rules for a president's exit from office, focusing on a smooth transition of power and, importantly, post-presidency accountability.
You know how a lame duck president is on their way out of office? To prevent them from making last-minute decisions that could tie the hands of their successor, the report proposes this strict list of forbidden actions during the transition period. This would include banning new long-term appointments, signing major contracts, or selling off public assets. So, what about presidential immunity? The proposal clarifies it in a big way. While civil proceedings for personal acts can be brought at any time, any criminal proceedings for personal acts committed either before or during their term would have a 4-year window after they leave office. It's a really clear attempt to balance immunity for official acts with accountability for personal ones. So from a younger age requirement at a longer term to a strict separation of powers, a smaller government, and limited immunity, this is a truly comprehensive vision for reform. When you take it all together, the big question is whether this blueprint, if it's ever implemented, can really transform Ghana's democracy from one that's just focused on elections to one that actually delivers real, lasting development. And that, well, that remains the ultimate test.